All right, guys. So we got a clip here from Velshi, one of the few respectable anchors over at MSNBC, giving a dire warning on Trump's fascist takeover of the United States. So I want to watch a little bit of this clip here, this monologue that he did, and then I got some more updates on Trump's expanding deployment of the National Guard around the country, and also some clips of Donald Trump just outright floating the idea of making himself an open dictator. So we're going to get to that here in a minute, but let's just go ahead and watch a little bit of this clip here.
It's Sunday, August the 24th. I'm Velshi, and we begin this hour with a reality check, a crucial one. The collapse of democracy is a strange, almost surreal thing. It can be abstract and hard to recognize in the moment. At first, it just feels like politics. It's messy, it's noisy, it's frustrating, and sometimes a bit removed from one's day-to-day life. But then the guardrails that we've taken for granted begin to topple, one after another. A National Guard unit deployed to a city that never asked for it. Key parts of the nation's electoral process attacked as illegitimate. Rulings of federal judges shrugged off as optional. Neighbors disappeared into ICE vans. Critics and political opponents suddenly faced with criminal probes. The media behaving in ways designed not to trigger the ire of the ruling party. Each new abuse is justified as temporary, necessary, even an emergency. Until one day, it's not temporary at all. Until one day, the justifications stop altogether, because once power is absolute, it no longer feels the need to explain itself. At best, each assault may seem like an outlier until the day you wake up and realize the system itself has become unrecognizable. Well, that's where we are right now. It's not where we're headed, it's where we are. The tragedy of what's unfolding and the danger of what's ahead will be compounded if American citizens en masse, all of us, do not recognize this moment for what it is. Understandably, unless it touches you directly, it's easy to say sometimes to miss what's being taken away. We've been telling ourselves the courts will stop it. Congress will step in. Surely someone will draw the line. Yet one by one, those lines have already been crossed. Just look around. Last night, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker had to publicly rebuke President Trump's reported plan to send military troops into Illinois. Pritzker made clear Illinois has asked for no such help. Doesn't need that help. There's no emergency on the ground. His warning was blunt. Trump is, quote, attempting to manufacture a crisis, politicize Americans who serve in uniform, and continue abusing his power to distract from the pain he is causing working families, end quote. That is the governor of one of America's most populous states, sounding the alarm that the President of the United States is turning the nation's military into a domestic political weapon. And he's right. This is not about public safety. It's about flexing power, teaching dissenters and political opponents a lesson, normalizing the use of troops against Americans. In the nation's capital, hundreds of federal troops now patrol the streets alongside ICE and DEA and FBI agents, ticketing residents for minor offenses like broken taillights. Federal troops policing petty crime on America's main street. Think about that. Crime may be statistically down, but intimidation is way up. The police state is here, and that's the whole point. D.C. restaurants and bars report business down by 1/3. What Trump is doing is designed to bleed blue cities dry economically. Meanwhile, red state governors are planning on sending hundreds more Guard troops into the Capitol. Soldiers who, by the way, have no training in urban policing.
Yeah, so the whole thing is absolutely insane, right? I live here in Washington, D.C., and I hadn't seen National Guard's troops until like the last couple of days, but they're now like in the area, in the neighborhood that I myself live in. And it's just like a bizarre phenomenon. I don't even think that the National Guard's people who are being deployed even know what they're doing here. I guess they're going around and ticketing people or assisting with the feds and with ICE and some of their immigration roundups that they've been doing. But it's entirely pointless to have them here. As you pointed out there, number one, crime in DC is statistically down right now. It's not like we had some massive outlier emergency that would require this kind of thing. This is all entirely unconstitutional. And as Ali was pointing out there, the point is not to address crime or to assist with immigration raids or anything like that. The point is to instill intimidation. That's the point. The point is to normalize the presence of U.S. military on the American streets, right? That's what the entire point of this kind of thing is. It's a power flex. It is Donald Trump trying to assert that as his right to deploy U.S. military on the streets of the United States. That's what this is actually about. Now, the one thing that I'll divert from Ali Velshi on here before we move on to the rest of the updates on, Trump calling himself a dictator and expanding the deployment of these troops. The one thing I'll disagree on is that what we are witnessing right now is not the collapse of democracy. It's the collapse of the facade of democracy, of the sort of fake pretend democracy that we have in place here. And that's sort of a key point to me in my understanding of politics, is that we already weren't a democracy. We are an oligarchy in this country. We are ruled by elite, ruled by the billionaire class, ruled by corporations. And it's been that way for a very long time. And so this kind of like a brazen and an open fascism that we've been witnessing from Donald Trump is an outgrowth of that more fundamental reality. It's the entire reason why Donald Trump can rise to the position of being elected president in the first place, is because you have people's material conditions, average working class people, their lives are unbearable economically. People can't afford groceries, they can't afford housing, they can't afford childcare, they can't afford healthcare. They're being screwed a million different ways. In the meantime, we have massive wealth consolidation at the top end of the spectrum, to the point now where we have like 5 guys who have more wealth than the bottom half of the country. You have this spiraling wealth inequality, and you have continued consolidation of power politically as an outgrowth of that, because our campaign finance system is basically just a system of legalized corruption and bribery. So it's because of those foundational anti-democratic things that had already existed in this country that we then get the outgrowth of Donald Trump, that we then get, the spiraling use of fear tactics and scapegoats, whether it be immigrants or gay people or trans people or whatever Republicans or many Democrats as well want to use on that day to distract from, again, those more underlying issues that they're completely ignoring, right? So that's how we end up in this kind of a position. It didn't come out of nowhere. It didn't start with Donald Trump. He's just sort of like the natural endpoint of capitalism, demolishing itself, eating itself from the inside. And you could also make the argument that this is sort of imperial tactics that we've used abroad now coming back home, the imperial boomerang effect. So I just wanted to lay that out there in terms of, it's important to understand that we didn't start this with Donald Trump, right? None of this started with Donald Trump. He's just sort of the more open-facing aspect of the collapse of American capitalism that we're witnessing in an extremely open and brazen way at this point. Now, speaking of that, we got a couple clips here from Donald Trump over the last couple of days of him just sort of like, I guess, half jokingly, but not really jokingly, given what we've seen from him, making himself a dictator. So let's go ahead and watch this first one here.
And they say, we don't need him, freedom, freedom. He's a dictator. He's a dictator. A lot of people are saying maybe we'd like a dictator.
A lot of people are saying maybe we'd like a dictator. That's what he's saying. We had another one here where he goes and talks about how he stops crime, and so therefore that makes him as a dictator acceptable.
But then he goes on television and says, oh, Trump is a dictator. He's a dictator. And a lot of people are so the line is that I'm a dictator, but I stop crime. So a lot of people say, if that's the case, I'd rather have a dictator. But I'm not a dictator. I just know how to stop.
So, people in the room are laughing. He kind of seems like he's half joking, but this is the same guy who literally tried to do a sort of self-coup to keep himself in power in 2020. So it's not as if like this would be out of the ordinary for him to try to do the same thing, whether it's in the 2026 midterm elections and trying to rig that in favor of Republicans so that they can keep control of the Senate or the House, or, pending whether or not he's still alive, if he tried to do that in 2028. This is the guy who did January 6th. So it's not like you can just shrug this off as some sort of a joke. He also, by the way, is, selling merch on his websites and in his emails and whatever, and has this entire shelf set up in the White House that is Trump 2028 merchandise. And he's had foreign leaders come in to the Oval Office, and he starts handing them this merchandise and talking about how, oh, so many people want me to run again. Maybe I'll run again. So, again, kind of seems half joking, but how unserious can we position a guy like this in the first place? Now, continuing on to the sort of military takeover of liberal cities around the country, including here in my city of DC, he's apparently going to expand this to not only the National Guard, but also what he calls the regular military. I'm guessing he means like the Marines, and, beyond that, expanding it to multiple cities around the country. So let's go ahead and watch this clip here.
And we haven't had to bring in the regular military, which we're willing to do if we have to. And after we do this, we'll go to another location and we'll make it safe also. We're going to make our country very safe. We're going to make our cities very, very safe. Chicago's a mess. You have an incompetent mayor, grossly incompetent. And we'll straighten that one out probably next. That'll be our next one after this. And it won't even be tough. And the people in Chicago, Mr. Vice President, are screaming for us to come. They're wearing red hats, just like this one. But they're wearing red hats. African-American ladies, beautiful ladies, are saying, please, President Trump, come to Chicago. Please. I did great with the black vote, as you know.
Okay. Beautiful black ladies are screaming for Donald Trump to invade Chicago with the U.S. military. That's the claim that's being made here. He says it's wildly popular. Everybody wants him to do it. I guess that's why we saw clips of J.D. Vance trying to come to Washington, D.C. to walk through Union Station, and people were yelling, surrounding him in a crowd saying, go fuck a couch, J.D., right? Because everybody was welcoming him here to our city. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. And again, he's talking about not just the National Guard, but also the regular military. And honestly, I don't even know what you could plausibly say is the plan here outside of just trying to sort of terrorize liberal cities, or again, to do some sort of like a power flex, because it's not like you're addressing crime in any serious way. I mean, you sent the military to LA, you've sent them now here to DC. What exactly are they doing to prevent crime, to address crime? Are they going to be making arrests? Are they going to be doing police work? Are they going to be shooting people on the streets? Like, what are we actually talking about here as an end goal, other than just, again, normalizing having military presence on the ground in basically, it seems like every American city is what he wants to do with this. Now, we also have another one here in terms of his brazen authoritarianism. He's signing an executive order to punish anybody who burns an American flag, which has already been settled by the Supreme Court, I believe in the late 1990s, as a constitutionally protected form of protest. And he says you're going to get 1 year in prison if you burn the American flag. He says you get 1 year in jail, no early exits, no nothing, 1 year in jail if you burn the American flag. What it does is to incite a riot. And this is coming obviously amidst other widespread crackdowns on any form of protest here in the United States. And again, that's not something that's unique to Donald Trump. We also saw this with pro-Palestine protests under the Biden administration. We had even universities bending the knee and cracking down on their own students for daring to set up like peaceful encampments to protest a genocide that our government and their universities are complicit in. So, you know, this concept of cracking down on people who dare to legally and constitutionally protest our own government and sending them to jail. I mean, this is something that I think is going to be escalating significantly in the future. We also have, again, him on deploying the National Guard to Chicago. He says, I have the right to do anything I want to do. I'm the president of the United States. Again, sort of an insight into what he thinks the president is or should be, basically a dictatorship where he gets to do whatever he wants beyond the bounds of the law or constitution or whatever the case may be. He's the president, so he's fully in charge. We also had this insane moment here in my city of Washington, D.C., where one of these National Guard's vehicles, I mean, this is a fully kitted out real legit military vehicle. You can see it here in the background, absolutely gigantic. And it plowed into the side of some resident's car and sent them to the hospital, sent a family to the hospital. They had to use the jaws of life to pull them out of this car. I mean, this is what we're talking about, guys. Like, this is just, think about how absurd and ridiculous this is, that we have U.S. military vehicles patrolling the streets and getting into car accidents with residents here. Is this making DC residents safer to have these kinds of situations? We also have here an update from Jackie Heinrich in terms of where this is going in the future. Again, this is potentially going to be going to upwards of, as she says here, 19 states in the next couple of weeks. Documents obtained by Fox News show planning for activations in Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico, Ohio, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Virginia, and Wyoming. So this is what we're going to be seeing over just the next couple of weeks here. deployment of the U.S. military across basically, it seems like every major city in the country. In terms of how the American people are feeling about this, or at least here specifically in Washington, D.C., contrary to Donald Trump saying that black women are screaming in red hats for him to come to their cities. Here we have about 8 in 10 Washingtonians opposing Donald Trump taking control of D.C.'s police and federal troops patrolling the streets. 8 in 10, again, not surprising. And we also have, again, as a reminder here, something that I think is important, the Democratic resistance, or lack thereof, the non-existence of the Democratic resistance. As a reminder, in response to Donald Trump deploying the military throughout Washington, D.C., the Democratic leader in the House of Representatives responded by saying, I think that the letter that was issued by the D.C. Attorney General was a strongly worded letter. So this is a good reminder that the resistance to Donald Trump, the resistance to fascism broadly in this country, is not going to come from the Democratic Party. Point blank, period. It's just not. You cannot be waiting for any sort of political savior, right? A politician is not going to be the solution to this. The Democratic Party is one side of the other coin of the capitalist and fascist sort of a coin that we have in this country. They are basically running in parallel to each other. And that's how we got to this position in the first place, right? If Democrats were truly a leftist, a social democratic, or a democratic socialist party that was looking out for average working class people, that was expanding our social safety net, that was addressing income and wealth inequality, that ensured everybody had their basic material conditions of housing and healthcare and childcare and education, etc., taken care of, Trump never would have won in the first place. And now we have this sort of decrepit leadership of Chuck Schumer, who I think hasn't done an interview in months at this point, and then Hakeem Jeffries, who's pushing the idea that the resistance to fascism is strongly worded letters. I mean, these people are not going to save us, right? Any sort of pushback or resistance to Donald Trump or to fascism in this country is going to have to come from mass organization and mass mobilization of average working class people, a mass coalition of people, millions across the country, who rise up against this. That's the only way that this is ever going to be confronted in any sort of serious way. It's not going to come from from the likes of Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, believe it or not. Now, a couple final things here. We also had this interesting statement by Donald Trump when he was doing a radio interview on Fox News, and it kind of came out of nowhere. He was talking about, I guess, peace with Ukraine and Russia. And he says, I want to try to get to heaven if possible. I hear I'm not doing well. I hear I'm really at the bottom of the totem pole. So this is something that's like pretty out of character for Donald Trump, I would say. I don't think I've ever heard him talk about heaven or the prospects of himself getting into heaven. And it's especially weird when you consider that this is coming at the same time that we've been getting report after report about his deteriorating health, right? So there have been images that have been floating around online of like these massive bruises that he has on his hands that some people are speculating is from IVs, where he could be getting treatment. There is also reporting that he got diagnosed with, I believe it's called something, constricted venous insufficiency, or some chronic venous insufficiency is what it's called. So he could potentially be having heart issues as well. On top of that, he's got these massively swollen cankles walking around lately. He has a limp. I mean, there are like so many different things that could potentially be going wrong health-wise for Donald Trump. So we could end up in a situation where the Donald Trump problem is sort of solving itself. I guess that's a way to put it. It may solve itself, before his presidency eventually ends, or before he can try to stay in power in 2028. But again, that doesn't really address the underlying issues that we're facing as a country, right? With Donald Trump specifically, we've seen a drastic expansion of the mass surveillance state working in coordination with tech oligarchs and corporations like Palantir. We've seen obviously a drastic expansion of the police state, now literally deploying U.S. military personnel on the streets as intimidation tactics and to normalize their presence on the streets of the U.S. And we have massive crackdowns on censorship, on the right to free speech, on the right to protest, not just with the flag burning stuff, but also Trump directly going after media outlets, directly going after U.S. universities to get them to crack down on anybody who criticizes Israel. We also have the establishment of concentration camps at this point for migrants that they're rounding up. We have ICE goons, Gestapo thugs running around the street in unmarked vehicles, in unmarked vests with guns and kidnapping people off the streets. So, I mean, with Donald Trump, we've seen a heightened state of our descent to fascism. But again, the final final point that I'll leave you guys off with here is that this did not come out of nowhere. And if you aren't addressing the underlying things that led to the election of Donald Trump, that led to the spiral to fascism, then you're not going to be able to address this in a serious way.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying